The wind arrives first. Not the gentle breeze tourists expect from Prince Edward Island, but the kind that rattles old glass and slips through century-old woodwork. It's as if the towering Victorian mansion itself is breathing on the western shore of the island, overlooking the waters of Malpeque Bay. Its steep roof lines, ornate gingerbread trim, and octagonal cupola rise above the landscape like something transplanted from a Gothic novel. Today, it's a museum, and as the last visitor leaves and the sounds of footsteps on the gravel fades, somewhere on the second floor of this grand house, something remains. It's been there longer than the museum, longer than the provincial park they grew up around it, longer than anyone who works there can remember. And it doesn't leave when the season ends. It doesn't leave when the windows are boarded up for the winter. It simply stays, watches, and waits. And occasionally, it whispers.
And I looked at the woman who was standing closest to me upstairs, and her eyes were like this. And she said, "Did you just hear whispering in the kitchen?" And I said, yeah, I did. And we went down and had a look, and there was nobody in the kitchen.
I'm Nadine Bailey, and this is Haunted Canada. Today, I'm joined by Caitlyn Paxson, Programming and Education Officer for the PEI Museum and Heritage Foundation, as she takes us inside one of Prince Edward Island's most famously haunted historic homes. This is the Yeo House. Prince Edward Island is known for red cliffs, rolling farmland, and stories that feel almost too gentle to frighten anyone. But there are places on the island where history lingers in a different way. On the northwestern shore of the island, the land slopes gently towards the water as the tidal rivers cut through the land. This is where, long before European settlers, the Mi'kmaq made their home for thousands of years. They knew these shores, rivers, and forests. The Mi'kmaq named the island Epiquick, which means lying in the water, and it speaks to how the land was shaped by water on every side. The sea defines it, and the river and inlets divide it, and the Mi'kmaq traveled on those waters to fish and live in deep connection with the land that would one day be called Prince Edward Island. European settlers arrived in the 18th century, and the land was first under French colonial rule and then under the British. They took control of the island in 1763, following the 7 Years' War, and named it Prince Edward Island, in honor of Prince Edward, Duke of Kent, in 1799. Slowly after, settlers, including Loyalists, Irish, and the Cornish people, began to claim the land along its shores. James Yeo was one of them, and he is a central figure in today's story. James was born in 1789 in Kilhampton, Cornwall, England, and was the eldest son of James Yeo, a shoemaker, and Anne Osborne. He was a laborer for many years and got married in 1812 to a Mary Frances, with whom he had 3 children. In either 1814 or 1815, he set up a carter between Kilhampton and Bidford, Devon, and when his wife died in 1818, his business failed, partly as a result of his drunkenness. A year or so later, in May 1819, he married Damaris Sargent of Kilhampton. The couple probably immigrated the same year to Port Hill, Prince County, Prince Edward Island. Like many immigrants arriving in British North America, he came seeking opportunity. What made him different was his ability to recognize where that opportunity truly existed. First, he worked as superintendent of the lumbering gangs and helped to manage the business established by Thomas Bernard in 1818. The merchant focused on lumbering and shipbuilding. When Bernard died in 1826, the business was left to William Ellis, a master shipbuilder. But it had a large number of outstanding accounts. That's when James saw an opportunity. He collected the debts in the name of the Bernard family, with whom he was known to be associated, but he then kept the proceeds that were legally meant for Ellis. By doing this, he managed to make enough money to set up a small scale as a lumber dealer, storekeeper, owner, and master of the 35-foot merchant schooner Marianne, which he sailed from 1829 to 1832. His timing couldn't have been more perfect. Throughout the mid-1800s, the British Empire depended heavily on maritime transportation. Timber from British North America was in high demand. Wooden sailing vessels remained essential to international trade. Across Prince Edward Island, shipyards emerged along the coastline. The island possessed exactly what shipbuilders needed: vast forests, protected harbors, skilled labor, and access to Atlantic shipping routes. By the mid-1830s, James already had considerable influence in Prince County because he had purchased the original business from Ellis, and within 10 years, he became one of the island's biggest shipbuilders. He was responsible for the construction of at least 155 ships at a time when new ships built for sale in Britain were by far the most important Prince Edward Island export. Because of this, he single-handedly became a vital part of the colony's economic development. The business became a family affair, as his youngest sons, James and John, and his sons-in-law and their associates built at least another 200 vessels. His eldest son, William, returned to Britain in 1843 to act as his father's principal agent, and together they owned up to 20 cargo ships that sailed for ports all over the world. Their business interests expanded, their wealth increased, and their name became one of the most recognizable in Western Prince Edward Island.
He and his sons then sort of ran the shipbuilding that was happening out of that area of the island over the course of the 1800s. And by the 1860s, his son, who was also named James Yeo, had taken over the part of the shipbuilding business that was located at Green Park, which is where the museum is also located. And his son James built the Yeo House for his growing family. And he and his wife, Sarah Jane, and their children lived in the Yeo House.
That's Caitlyn Paxson. She's a writer, author, and folklore scholar who spent years managing the Yeo House site. She also created the Haunted Tour that now draws visitors from around the world every summer. She said that by the time James Yeo Jr. was born, the difficult years of establishing the family's position had largely been completed by his father. As James matured, he entered the family business, but by then, things had become increasingly sophisticated. Shipbuilding was now more than just hammering boards together. It required business knowledge, financial management, trade relationships, and James proved he was more than capable because by the 1860s, he had become one of the most prominent businessmen on Prince Edward Island. Caitlyn said he wanted to build a statement to his wealth and status.
A lot of the really large, opulent homes on the island were built by shipbuilders because they were some of the wealthier people on the island in the 1800s, and you really could see that they were able to pull from that sort of hash of craftsmen that they had at their disposal from shipbuilding in order to build some pretty fabulous houses. I will say the Yeo House is not the most ornate of the shipbuilding houses on the island. It was built, I think, a little more for practicality, but it does still show off its the family's wealth by virtue of its size, I would say.
At first glance, it seems like a straightforward expression of Victorian wealth. The 3-story Gothic Revival-inspired country mansion It features 17 rooms, servants' quarters, a steeply pitched roof, decorated barge board, gingerbread trim with a highly distinctive octagonal cupola with a grand wraparound veranda that provides sweeping views of the surrounding water and former shipyard. Unlike most ship magnates of the era, Yeo's house overlooked the shipyard. The source of his fortune remained constantly visible. For those windows in the cupola atop the mansion, James could literally watch his wealth being created. The mansion itself reflected the confidence of the era. The house was a statement that the Yeo family had arrived. James Jr. and his wife, Sarah Ann, raised their 10 children in the home. As he enjoyed the height of his prosperity, forces beyond his control were already reshaping the world. Industrialization shifted society from handcrafted economies to mechanized, factory-based production. Then, the invention of the steam engine changed everything even more. Iron and steel ships gained popularity. The age of wooden sailing vessels began its slow decline. The industry that had created fortunes across Atlantic Canada entered a prolonged decline. The world that had elevated the Yeo family was disappearing. According to heritage records, after the collapse of the Prince Edward Island's wooden shipbuilding industry, Port Hill gradually reverted to a farming community. The once grand mansion ceased being the center of a maritime empire and became, in essence, an unusually large farmhouse. The house survived, while the world that created it disappeared around it. James witnessed this transformation firsthand, as the house was passed down in the family until the mid-20th century, when Yeo ownership ended.
There are many Yeos still in the area. So the original James Yeo, who came to the island, had many children, and then those children had many children. So there are many, many Yeos on the island. It's very common.
During the 1960s, the government of Prince Edward Island acquired the property and surrounding lands to create a provincial park. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, Green Park was transformed into a museum to honor the island's shipbuilding history, and Yeo House would become its centerpiece. And so the preservation work began, and with it came historians, researchers, and carpenters. For the first time in decades, strangers once again filled the halls. And that is when another chapter of the story began. Because restoring an old house means opening walls, opening attics, opening forgotten spaces, disturbing places untouched for generations. And as restoration progressed, stories started circulating among staff. People heard footsteps and unexplained sounds. They felt odd sensations, like someone else was in the building long after everyone had gone home. The Yeo House had entered a new phase of its life. It was no longer a family home, no longer a farmhouse, no longer the headquarters of a maritime empire. Now it was something else, a keeper of memories.
I used to run school programs there, and pretty much every school program there'd be a kid, a local kid, who would say, "I'm a Yeo." And, you know, sometimes you're in the position of telling these slightly sensational stories about the family's history to the literal descendants of the family who don't know the stories.
Today, they are among the thousands of people who walk through its rooms each year as they admire the architecture, learn about shipbuilding, and hear stories about the Yeo family. And almost all of them pause for a moment when they reach the quietest parts of the house. The hallways where no one seems to be standing. The staircases where no one appears to be climbing. the rooms where history feels strangely close. Because after all these years, Yeo House still feels occupied.
I'd say most of the sighting stories we have, there are several that are around people seeing a woman on the second floor of the house. And then there's also a number of different incidents where people claim to have seen like the outline of a figure and sort of a shadowy outline in different contexts. The area where a woman is frequently encountered is where the lady of the house is said to have spent a lot of time sitting. There's a very bright window in that part of the house, and Sarah Jane is said to have sat there to do spinning and to sort of keep an eye on the staff because you can see down into the lower level through the staircase.
From there, she could see everything in the busy Victorian household of 10 children. She spent years watching from that spot. But Caitlyn said she is hesitant to identify the ghost on the second floor.
We try not to weigh in too much on like, this is the spirit of this person. You know, we really try with the program to just sort of present the information. Like, this is what people have experienced. This is the history of the house, and let people draw their own conclusions.
After all, the Yeo House is now a museum, a monument, a place where visitors come to witness one of the last surviving links to Prince Edward Island's shipbuilding age. And then came the discovery of the toy known as Wheelie.
He's like a little toy that was on wheels that could be pulled behind, the child. And he's like a little Pomeranian dog, but he clearly has had a lot of love in his life. His little face is mostly worn off, so he looks very odd. People often think he's a sheep. He's actually a dog. He's missing a wheel. And the funny thing about Wheelie is that we know for sure from our records that he was found at the Yeo House, but the lore that is attached to him that's been sort of passed down from the staff is that he was actually found hidden in the wall of the house.
Found hidden within the structure of the house itself, Wheelie seems like a forgotten chapter of the building's history. No one knows exactly how long it had been there or who had hidden it. But Caitlyn says there are theories.
It was very common for immigrants, particularly of Celtic extraction, when they built homes, they would often, and this is true both in the UK and here, they would often take a well-used object. So often it was like a shoe or stays, something that had been worn and had a lot of the energy of the person who used it sort of imbued in it. And they would take that object and hide it either in the wall of the house when it was being constructed or under the floorboards as a sort of protective charm against evil spirits. So that's a very common practice. There are many sites that have found these sort of, as they're sometimes called, intentionally sequestered objects. And so one theory we have is that perhaps Wheelie was such an object.
When staff placed Wheelie among the museum collection, they expected it to become another historical artifact. Instead, it developed a reputation, and what transformed Wheelie from an old toy into a local legend is the reason why Wheelie sits in a pedestal behind glass in the girls' room.
The funny thing about Wheelie is that over the years, museum staff had found that if he was left on the floor of the children's room at the Yeo House overnight, sort of with the other toys, they would come back the next day and discover that he had moved to a different spot in the room. So that is Wheelie's secret power. He moves around at night.
Soon, Wheelie became the center of countless conversations. Visitors asked about it. Staff exchanged stories about it. The little toy dog developed a personality of its own. Some joked that Wheelie disliked being ignored. Others wondered whether the toy carried some lingering connection to the unknown child who once loved it. That's what led Mi'kmaq Paranormal, a group based out of Lennox Island, led by Julie Peltier-Lush, to investigate. They hope to reach back through time to those who came before and use an EMF reader to measure electromagnetic frequencies as a way to communicate. Caitlyn was with them that day.
I was walking through the downstairs of the house with them with this device, and it was going beep, 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 which was normal. Then all of a sudden it started to go beep, 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 beep. And we were like, oh my gosh, what's happening? What's going on? Because nothing had changed sort of in our immediate vicinity. And my colleague came running down the stairs. She said, you're not going to believe what just happened. So I had sent her up to the girls' bedroom. There's sort of multiple bedrooms in the house. And I had sent her up to the girls' room where Wheelie resides. Since Wheelie has become a little bit famous, he now lives in a glass box, sort of on a pedestal, rather than being on the floor with the other toys. But I had asked her to take him out of his case and put him in his old spot on the floor for the purposes of the investigation. And she said, I had just taken the box off of Wheelie, and I reached my hand underneath him, and I was just about to lift him up when downstairs I heard beep, 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 beep. So my working theory is that Wheelie likes his little pedestal. He was like, no, thank you. I don't want to go back on the floor. This is fine.
Even after Wheelie was secured inside a display case, odd occurrences inside the house reportedly continued, as if the toy had never been the source of the mystery at all. As if Wheelie was merely the messenger, a reminder that old houses have long memories. And perhaps that is the creepiest possibility, because the phenomenon at the Yeo House are not confined to a single room, a single artifact, or a figure seen near a window. If Yeo House were simply an old mansion, the story would have ended by now. But for decades, visitors and staff have insisted that something about the building feels different. They've all had strange experiences in hallways, the kitchen, and in the servants' quarters, including Caitlyn.
So it's very, dark and mysterious in the winter. And in the spring, we come through and open everything up and set up all the artifacts. So we had just gone over, a group of us had gone over to the house, and it's quite remote. So, we were the only ones there. And we were setting up the upstairs hallway. And I was standing sort of at the back of the hallway at the top of where the servant staircase goes down into the kitchen area. And I was looking down the hall at my colleagues who were sort of setting things up. And I heard the kitchen door slam. And then I heard someone whispering. And I thought, oh, someone must have gone out to take a phone call. And maybe there were too many mosquitoes. And they came into the kitchen to finish the call. They're just finishing up their phone call. So I heard this I couldn't tell what they were saying, but it was that sort of sound when someone is sort of talking quietly on the phone. And then I was sort of standing there as the noise faded out, and I looked down the hallway, and I realized that everyone I'd come to the house with that day was standing in the hallway. There wasn't anyone to have gone and taken a call. And I looked at the woman who was standing closest to me upstairs, and her eyes were like this, and she said, did you just hear whispering in the kitchen? And I said, yeah, I did. And we went down and had a look, and there was nobody in the kitchen.
Caitlyn felt she was now part of the home's haunted history.
One part heebie-jeebies, one part delight, because now I have my own personal story to add to the tour.
But not everyone feels that way, especially if you're a young student taking a break in the back of the house. That's where the servants' quarters are. During the Yeo House era, that would have been filled with activity as they kept the household running. Today, one of those rooms is where staff go for a little peace and quiet. At least, that's what a young guide was doing until she was disturbed.
She was in the staff room having her lunch. She was facing the door that leads out into the house, the rest of the house, and she saw the doorknob turn and assumed that one of her colleagues was coming into the room. But the door swung open and there was no one there. And then the light that was hanging above the table she was sitting at started to swing back and forth. And she was quite scared. And I'm told after that was like, please don't make me work in the house. Keep me in the museum.
No draft, no open window, no footsteps approaching. Just a door that opened by an unseen hand.
Something odd is happening in this building because so many people who work there, so many people who visited have had odd experiences in the house.
If you want to be one of the lucky or unlucky ones to experience it for yourself, the Yeo House Haunted Tours run July and August each year by the PEI Museum and Heritage Foundation. Caitlyn recommends you go with an open mind and a little expectation because the Yeo House does not perform on command. It doesn't rattle chains or slam doors for dramatic effect. It's not the type of place portrayed in horror movies. The stories connected to Yeo House are quieter than that, and somehow, because of that, they feel more believable. They are rooted in a feeling, and unmistakable sensation that someone or something is there with you, even when you're alone. Close enough that if you turn around quickly, you expect to see a face, yet there's nothing there. The human mind is remarkably sensitive to subtle environmental cues. We evolved to detect danger, to notice movement, to recognize when something feels wrong. And perhaps that is exactly what happens inside Yeo House. Thank you for joining me as we explored the Yeo House in Prince Edward Island, and a special thank you to Caitlyn Paxson for taking the time to talk with me. I really do appreciate it. If you want to visit the Yeo House, I will link their website in the show notes. Do you have your own ghost story, paranormal encounter, or true crime? If yes, email it to me so that I can cover it and share with the listeners on this podcast. Please email me through the website hauntedcanada.com. If this episode gave you the chills in the best possible way, please consider supporting this show by buying me a coffee. The link is in the show notes. Every coffee helps keep these stories coming, and if you want to go even deeper, stay tuned because I will be adding a Patreon very soon. Haunted Canada is sponsored by the Edmonton Ghost Tours. I will link the website in the show notes. Haunted Canada is written and produced by me, Nadine Bailey, with senior producer Dita Velasquez. Production and sound design is by Rob Johnston, with help from Corey Price. If you would like to support this podcast, please follow, share, and tell a friend about this podcast. We would also appreciate a like and a 5-star written review. If you're on Spotify, tap follow. It helps more people find these Canadian ghost stories. Also, you can follow me under different social media platforms, including TikTok and my YouTube channel, Haunted Canada. Hey everyone, I've got some exciting news. I will be hosting a haunted and paranormal tour of Ireland in May 2027 in partnership with my friend Joanne at Expedia. We will be visiting haunted locations, staying in haunted castles, and exploring many historical places while delving into ghosts, hauntings, and paranormal activity. So be sure to bring your EMF readers with you. I'll be able to provide lots of information. Everything is linked on my website, hauntedcanada.com. If you have any questions, email me. And of course, remember, space is limited, so book early. Thank you from all of us at Haunted Canada and Curious Cast. Have a good night, everyone, and stay haunted.